been so thrilled to find had been defaced on the flyleaf. I am usually careful enough to flip through a book before I buy it, but in this instance the pages had stuck together, and that prevented me from noticing the inscription on my cursory examination in the shop. As far as I'd been able to tell, the book was in mint condition. There were no signs of wear, no price clipping or creases on the spine, and certainly no telltale coffee rings on the cover. In fact, it looked as if it had never been read. Curious, I sipped some more ale and held open the flyleaf so that I might read the offending scribble. Miss Scott, you know you want to read Browning's poetry. My Last Duchess and Porphyria's Lover in particular. The Ring and the Book, too, perhaps, though that one is rather long and much abbreviated here. No poet quite captures adultery, betrayal, madness, and the act of murder the way Browning does. Try this. I found a thing to do, and all her hair in one long yellow string I wound 3 times her little throat around, and strangled her. No pain felt she. I am quite sure she felt no pain. Porphyria's Lover. Then she is his forever. Don't you just love that? Doesn't it sound like fun? I know that I would enjoy it. And don't forget our little bargain. The time is fast approaching. Happy reading, Miss Scott. Barnes. This highly unusual inscription sent a chill through me, despite the warmth of the day. I felt as if someone had just walked over my grave, as my mother used to say. When the serving girl brought my food and knelt to push a wad of folded beer mat under the table leg to correct the wobble, I pushed the book aside and tucked in, having hardly realized in the morning's excitement just how hungry I was. But, as I ate, I couldn't help but mull over what I had just read. I realize that at this point you may well be wondering whether I am overreacting to what is, after all, merely a damaged second-hand book. After all, I could always return it to the shop for a refund, or perhaps attempt to slice out the ravaged page with a razor blade at home. I hadn't read Browning in a long time, and was looking forward to reacquainting myself with his work. But I certainly didn't think I could enjoy reading this particular copy. It had been defiled. There was something about the tone of the inscription that disturbed me deeply. What sort of person, I wondered, would write something like that in a gift, in a volume of poetry? There seemed a definite aura of taunting cruelty about the words, a certain delight in causing another unease and discomfort. If Miss Scott had seen this, no wonder she had dispatched the book to a second-hand shop immediately. Porphyria's Lover had always disturbed me. I remember the frisson of forbidden delights I experienced when I first came across it in the 6th form. Could one really say this sort of thing in poetry, in that same burnished, heightened language of Shakespeare, Shelley, and Keats? My pleasure was akin to the thrill of discovering Lord Rochester's sexually explicit verse a few years later, in my student days. There is something about the matter-of-fact nature of Browning's use of language in Porphyria's Lover, the contrast between its serene tone and the violent deed itself, the sensuality of the hair and her little throat. One can easily imagine the murderer sitting there, content with his handiwork, his arm around the beautiful, unfaithful lover he has just strangled, smiling, happy, convinced that he now has possession of her forever. Perhaps the whole thing was intended as a sick joke, I told myself. But I couldn't stop wondering who these people were, and why this Barnes fellow had written those words. Whatever had Miss Scott done to him to bring about such a deliberate desire to cause her discomfort? And how long ago had this occurred? The book could have been sitting on the shelf for years, as many volumes of poetry often do in second-hand bookshops. In the meantime, what had become of Miss Scott and Barnes? Was there a murder to be investigated? And who had sold the book to the dealer? Miss Scott herself? Had she even seen the inscription? It was possible that she hadn't if the pages had been stuck in the same...